Besides their love for David Hasselhoff, foosball, small talk, people claiming they've been to Bielefeld, Germans also love hearing people talk about Germany, and I have some ideas as to why. Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. Along with travel, a big focus of our channel is the cultural differences we've experienced between the US and Germany and why these cultural differences exist, but it definitely leans more towards the interesting things we learn about or experience in German culture. Just like this comment we recently received. Because of the types of videos we make, we often get asked who our audience primarily is, and just like this comment suggests, you can read through the comments on any given video of ours and quickly assess who our audience primarily probably is. However, people are often shocked to hear that, in fact, our audience is extremely lopsided because it normally stays in the range of 70 to 75% Germans and only about 5 to 7% are Americans, even though most of our videos focus on trying to explain German culture. After 2.5 years of making YouTube videos in Germany, studying German culture, and interacting with our large German audience, I have often asked myself the question, why do Germans love watching videos about Germans? And through this process, I have developed a few hypotheses as to why this is the case. Before I get started, I definitely want to say that none of this is meant as a critique of Germans. Of course, I love our German audience, and it is because of you guys that we have learned so much and honestly are even able to make videos. What theories I have developed to explain why Germans seem so interested in videos about Germany are based on my observations after years of making videos about our experiences in Germany, reading thousands of comments from our German audience, and studying German culture and society as we have been fully immersed in it. But I would also definitely welcome all of your thoughts and observations in the comments below. In particular, I would love to know why you are watching a video of a foreigner talking about his take on Germany and what about it interests you. Recently, I made a video discussing why there are so many Americans moving to Germany, and a big question I had was, are there really a lot of Americans moving to Germany, or was it just the fact that every day I was being suggested new Americans in Germany YouTube channels, and that made me feel like this was the case? And actually, it is more than just Americans in Germany YouTube channels. There are also Canadians, Indians, Brits, Australians, New Zealanders, etc. And maybe you have noticed your YouTube feed filling up with these sorts of channels as well. Now, I will say this is definitely a thing in other countries as well, and there are of course channels of foreigners sharing their experiences living in other foreign countries all over the world, but for sure, the foreigners in Germany side of YouTube is definitely one of the more substantial communities. And sure, there are different factors that play into why this large niche on YouTube exists, with one being that Germany is one of the most popular destinations for expats, immigrants, and refugees, so there is a larger pool of people who could make these types of channels as opposed to, say, a country that has very few foreigners moving to it. Germany has quickly become one of the most multicultural nations in the world, and according to the German Federal Statistical Office, 26.7% of the population in Germany had a migrant background in 2020. Yet, one of the biggest factors for this growing trend on YouTube is the success of channels such as these talking about Germany and German culture, and that is largely because of the number of people interested in them, primarily led by Germans themselves. As some of you may not know, before moving to Germany, we traveled around the world for nearly a year, and we started our channel during these travels. As we were making videos about different countries all over the world, we had the wonderful opportunity to meet and chat with one of the most successful YouTube travel couples who at the time had over 250,000 subscribers. As we talked, they gave us the tips and tricks that led to their success on YouTube, and one thing they shared was the top channels prioritized going to countries in which the population in those countries love to watch videos about, well, themselves. They shared with us that these are the countries that make travel YouTube channels grow the fastest, and then shared with us specifically which countries those were. Honestly, a lot of them were what you would expect, the very patriotic countries that are famous for being patriotic and therefore like to hear about themselves. So like I mentioned, we couldn't make these videos without our German audience and all the rest of you guys watching, but also I want to give a special huge shout out and thanks to our patrons over on Patreon for supporting our channel. And if you'd like to know ways in which you could also support our channel, I will leave a link in the description to our Patreon that you can go check out. But also, simply hitting that like, subscribe buttons, and also leaving a comment about what you're enjoying this video and your thoughts on it goes a huge way in supporting our channel, and I would really appreciate you guys doing that. But with that being said, let's get back to the video. Now, I just mentioned the word patriotic, and often this word gets confused with nationalism. The words patriotism and nationalism are two words in the English language that have very similar meanings, but the two have very important different definitions and connotations. Dictionary.com explains the difference in a long article, but sums it up nicely with, in short, nationalism is kind of excessive, aggressive patriotism. In the English language, patriotism has a much more positive connotation to it compared to nationalism, which has a very negative connotation. But this line between nationalistic and patriotic can be very fine and hard to differentiate between at times, and this is particularly complicated in a country like Germany. An article from Spiegel.de says national pride, especially when it comes to publicly displaying a love or even a mild affinity for Germany, is still simply taboo. Walk around a German city on a normal day and you will often be hard pressed to find a single German flag flying. Even in the capital city of Berlin, you won't find nearly the number of flags flying as in capitals like Paris, London, or Washington, D.C. When Horst Köhler left a plum job as head of the International Monetary Fund to become Germany's president in 2004, he said in his speech, "I love Germany." Reuters reported at the time that the sentence sent a hush through the packed Reichstag's chamber. Now I'm going to quickly sum up the reason why this is the case and grossly oversimplify by saying that first off, Germany didn't get a chance to develop deep national patriotism as it only was really united into one country in the mid to late 1800s after hundreds, if not thousands of years of local and regional patriotism was already deeply ingrained. Then after the nationalistic, overly patriotic, and fascist reign of the Nazis, Germans do not want to appear overly zealous about their country and in a way be associated with that dark period's mentality towards Germany. Then again, the country was only just reunited in the early 90s, not really giving the country time to even develop deep patriotism for this newly shaped and formed nation according to some experts. So, with what I have said about certain countries loving watching videos about their country and them tending to be more patriotic countries that like to hear things about themselves, it seems like Germans shouldn't fit this definition. However, Germans seem to actually fall completely into this category based on the percentage of viewers being German in our audience and the overabundance of foreigners in Germany YouTube channels that perform very well because of the support from Germans watching their channels. So that is where I believe my first hypothesis as to why Germans love watching videos about Germany comes from, and that is that Germans have a growing feeling of patriotism, but they still feel they can't publicly show it, so they enjoy watching others have pride in their country privately, almost in a way showing their patriotism for them. Now again, please let me know your thoughts in the comments because I have had conversations with Germans where they truly don't understand the concept of pride in a country simply because they were born in it and totally reject the idea of patriotism. In fact, if we were to use a survey by YouGov as a measure of patriotism, only 5% of Germans answered they believe their country was the best in the world, compared to 41% in the US who believe this, or 34% in Australia and 36% in India, indicating to some scholars that Germans still have a fairly low score of patriotism comparatively. But I also believe that there are a lot of Germans that do have national pride, and this is a trend that is growing. Handelsblatt.com has an article discussing this phenomenon by saying many Germans feel that patriotism in their country only properly began returning to health in 2006 when Germany hosted World Cup in soccer. While the tournament lasted, the whole country was bathed in flags, both those of the visiting teams and the black, red, gold. The colors were on cars, strollers, hats, and bikinis, displayed in amicable joy. It was then that the Germans realized they can be passionate without scaring the rest of the world, Mr. Grunewald said. So it is because of this that I believe with growing national pride combined with the still slight cultural ban on showing it, they enjoy watching foreigners talk about what they like about Germany to hear others have pride in their country. Okay, So maybe you are one of our 70% German audience members and you're thinking, no way, that is not true. We don't love watching these videos because of national pride. And you think you know the real reason. That's okay, because I believe you might fall under my second theory of why Germans love to watch videos about themselves, and that is because Germans love to correct people. Again, this is not a critique of our German audience. Although at times I don't necessarily enjoy this aspect of German culture, I can find value in the fact that it has taught us a lot of interesting cultural information about Germany. But it is a classic stereotype that Germans are strict rule followers and correct others when they are not following the rules. For example, play your music too loud on a Sunday and the old lady next door will call the Ordnungsamt on you. Or cross the street on a red light when there are children around, you might be reminded of the old "Bei Rot musst du stehen" rhyme. The same is true for YouTube videos. From personal experience, Germans seem to sometimes chomp at the bit as they watch foreigners try to explain their experiences with German culture, waiting for the foreigner to get something wrong so they can correct them. And to let you in on a little secret, I've actually talked with some of the other creators in our space, and because this is a known German quality, some creators will sometimes drop a slight inaccuracy on purpose because they know Germans will cherish the opportunity to comment and correct them, thus generating more engagement on their video, which then leads to YouTube promoting their video more, thus leading to more views. Now, you can debate on whether or not this is a good strategy, but the truth is, because this stereotype is so well known, people find ways to exploit it for their own success. The same Handelsblatt article from before has a section that I feel like might also explain why Germans might enjoy correcting foreigners in Germany because of recent history by saying, in 2015, more than 17 million people in Germany had foreign roots, and that was before Miss Merkel opened Germany's borders to refugees, which led to hundreds of thousands of new arrivals since. As a result, the idea of German Leitkultur, or dominant culture, has re-emerged as a topic of conversation. Whereas immigrant nations like Canada have long embraced multiculturalism, conservative Germans want migrants to adopt traditional German cultural norms. However, what are traditional German cultural norms? As we've discussed, a united Germany is extremely young and is made up of extremely diverse groups of cultures and traditions. For example, as we have discussed 1,000 times, tell a North German from Hamburg that you love their Lederhosen, Weisswurst, and Catholic traditions, and you will get a very angry and corrective response that this is not their culture, but rather Bavaria's. So even what a typical German is can be very hard to nail down, and again, as Handelsblatt describes, Germans will never settle on one definition of what it means to be German. They are on a constant search for themselves, but that also makes them inventive. They are always reestablishing themselves in the world, either as the land of ideas, or engineering experts, or leading exporters, Mr. Grunewald said. And by the way, this is something I constantly see in our comments of our videos. Some Germans trying to correct us on what we say about Germany when we overgeneralize, but then other Germans conflicting those Germans based on their experience in another part of the country. It gets very confusing for us foreigners. Of course, there are probably hundreds of other reasons Germans watch these types of videos and channels that are not as deep or philosophical, like they like to practice their English, or it is a little fascinating to get a fresh take on things you are accustomed to. Whatever the reason may be, I'm glad our German audience does. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is handball. What is your opinion on this sport so popular in Germany but unknown in the US? Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you in our next video. Deeply ingrained. Airplane. 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 Almost gone. Take 1,000. In particular, you could further support our channel. I will leave a link to close.